Hey, what is going on, guys? My name is Cal. Welcome back. Got another video for you. Now, I've been playing the Omniscience stacking Deadeye with Tornado Shot for a couple of days now, and I know that this build has kind of risen in popularity, and a lot of people are kind of looking into playing it or already are. And for the people that aren't playing it, I just kind of wanted to have this video uploaded just to talk about the build a little bit in detail, because this build is essentially a love-hate type of relationship for me so far, and I kind of wanted to go into why that is. Now, if you're looking to play this build and you don't have a ton of investment, I would honestly suggest that you probably look for something else if you intend on doing a lot of mapping. This build is incredibly fast, especially if you're able to use like onslaught boots, or you have, ways of just getting incredible speed, but overall, this build really doesn't have a lot of defenses. Now, what ends up happening, you essentially are going to feel really, really good. You're going to be going through your map, and you'll be one-shotting pretty much everything in sight, especially if your Omniscience is, relatively high. I would say anywhere over 1400 Omniscience is really, really good. I'm currently sitting at 1629. I actually could lower this a little bit. I could get a better bow. My bow is not amazing. It's just a 700 elemental DPS bow. I didn't want to spend too much when I first was gearing this character up because I didn't really know how things were actually going to play out. Now, with that being said, when you start playing this character, it's going to feel amazing. You'll be flying through your maps, especially if you have Onslaught boots. Even if you don't have that, you could have Onslaught on kill with the Ascendancy for Tailwind, and you'll always kind of be zooming, right? You'll always feel really fast. Now, you will, out of nowhere, be one-shot consistently on this build in maps. So if your goal is really to run a lot of maps, I would highly suggest looking for another type of build. Deadeye is just not a defensive class, and it never really has been. Now, I'm saying this as someone who... I actually lowered my spell suppression chance a little bit in favor of a life gain on hit Vitality Watcher's Eye, because I wasn't able to get spell suppression on my boots. Now, because of that is why my spell suppression, I had to look for it in other slots. I was able to get a really, really good spell suppression on my gloves, and then I went for, the Watcher's Eye that gave me a good amount. Now, I ended up selling that Watcher's Eye because I went ahead and chose this one for testing purposes with life gain on hit Vitality. This helps a lot because you do have a good amount of projectiles, especially if you invest with the +1 arrow bow like I have and the +1 arrow quiver. And then, of course, I also have an additional Ascendancy point, which allows, some good, I would say, overall quality of life and balance to the character, because it ends up looking like this. If you go with a Deadeye spec, you can, of course, look for a Raider Ascendancy notable as well. It's kind of flexible, I would say, depending on what you wanted. I just really wanted to have focal point and go max projectiles and off-screening potential. But you can do this, you can build this character, a lot of different ways. Now, I've died on this character a lot, and you might be wondering, well, how am I 97? Essentially, whenever you play Deadeye, if you care about leveling, the strategy is always going to be finish the story and then jump right into either pure breachstones, although I wouldn't even suggest pure breachstones because you probably would be off-screen by something if something hit you. So I did 5 ways from level 72, I believe, all the way to 97 straight. I never ran a map with this character until I was 97. That's what's kind of funny. So just kind of take these things into consideration. The life pool is going to be very low on this character. I mean, even if you try to be a little bit more aggressive with life, you're probably going to push maybe another 300, 400, 500 life. It's really difficult in the starting point of this tree to really be able to pull off life, especially if you're just going for the big damage and cluster jewel kind of setup. I was thinking about dropping this upper area here with Lionized Fall, kind of going for a second cluster as well. I mean, there's options you can do there. There's a lot of different things you can switch up. I could switch Brutal Restraint to Lethal Pride and get Strength instead, which doesn't really matter there, but really the kinds of notables that you can get are a little bit better. This one I was able to get for 4 exalts. There's 1 dead note here, but I got 10% increased dexterity, which is pretty good. A really nice, budget jewel. Now, there are probably a couple of things that you would want to have on this build going into it if you're kind of concerned. Now, my chaos resistance is not great, and you might be saying, well, okay, your chaos res is not good, that's why you're dying a lot. True, it might apply to an extent, but I generally play this character super ranged, right? So your goal is to stay far away. And you essentially run into a lot of issues where projectiles can absolutely murder you. If an enemy actually jumps on you, like a Beyond boss or something like that, you'll easily just get one-shotted just from that. And it can happen pretty, it's just sudden when it happens. Now, the build has insane damage. So if you're looking for a boss killer, if you're just looking to run bosses with this build, let's say if you just want to farm T16 Guardians or any kind of Conquerors or things like that, the build probably is really, really good. It'll just feel amazing to do that because the damage is just so high. I basically one or two shot these guys. There are times where you do need to build up your Hydrosphere kind of brittle stacks, like it has to proc because of the interrogation jewel. So sometimes it can feel like there's a little ramp up. But other than that, I mean, the build will absolutely shred. It just vaporizes everything. So you can go into, let's say, Cyrus, even though if you get touched by anything in Cyrus, you'll pretty much die instantly. But the fight is so short because you can just quickly, delete his health. And I actually respect my tree, so I'm not even currently bossing. I'm doing like a lot of just expedition farming is what I've been doing. So I took the expedition nodes and I'm constantly doing the scarabs. So I haven't even really put this character through efficient testing because I don't want to run bosses if I'm not using these nodes. So I kind of just stopped bossing for a bit just to do some mapping because I've been doing a lot of heisting. So I just kind of respect into these heist nodes. So I haven't even officially tested this character on a lot of bosses, but I did my friend's Uber Elder just for testing purposes, and I just vaporized everything in there, right? It's not going to be hard for you to kill the bosses. So if that's really what you want to do, no problem. Now I'm going to show a couple clips here just of random one-shots, things that can happen easily. So let's take a look at these here, and you guys can kind of see what I mean. But again, it's an amazing build. Just understand that there's a lot of currency required to get into this build, and if you don't actually have a good amount of currency, it can feel relatively squishy, or really squishy. You would realistically need to have 2 of these rings, 2 amethyst rings like this, and even you can lower your omniscience a little bit and go for chaos res as well on a suffix, but they're very, very expensive. I crafted all of my rings myself. This one is a triple stat, which is really cool. It just doesn't have, it's not the correct base, but it's still really nice. And I tried my hardest to craft my items myself. Everything here is self-crafted except for the quiver. I just bought the quiver outright because I didn't want to deal with trying to get +1 arrow with relevant stats. But everything else, these gloves are insanely good with Intimidate and good spell suppression. 32 spell suppression is really, really good because it's better even than a Hyries giving 30%. Now I couldn't really influence this enough to reliably sit there and try to get chaos resistance on the suffix. So I ended up with this fire res. I couldn't get accuracy. It's hard because you're essence spamming and you're just hoping for something, and then you kind of Eldritch craft it from there to try to hit something better. And I ended up with the T1 life, the lightning to attacks. I said, that's fine, I'll just keep it, it works. But you can definitely improve this build. So if you're just sitting on truckloads of currency and you actually want to keep pushing this character, you definitely can, and it probably will feel better. But I feel that I really should say that it's almost required to have a life gain on hit, Watcher's Eye with Vitality. I paid 2 exalts for this one, and it even had some fire damage leached as life while affected by anger. I don't do like that much fire damage, but it's there, and it's some kind of leech. It does help. I have noticed in certain instances I'm kind of out-leeching Corrupted Blood even, because I couldn't get Corrupted Blood immunity, because getting it on either Lion Eyes, a Watcher's Eye, or the Interrogation is just out of the question. I'm not going to spend 40 or 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 exalts on one of these, especially on a gamble for a build. I don't know how I really feel about it. So just take those things into consideration. I put over 100 exalts into this build. I would say it's probably, with the price hikes, everything has gone up so much because of the fact that everybody's kind of jumping on the hype train for it, whether they're playing it as Tornado Shot or they're doing Lightning Strike or whatever the case. There's so many variants out there now that are using Omniscience with the Crystallized, Amulet. So everyone's stacking Omniscience and just trying to go, crazy with it. So the prices kind of went crazy. Like I paid 8.5 exalts for this. This is now going for, I believe, like 14, 15. It's just the way, yeah, it's 14, 15x. Everything has kind of gone up a lot in price. Even the Onslaught implicit boots that I bought, even if we just take off all the variables here and we just kind of look for just Onslaught as a base, the cheapest one is 15x, assuming he sells it to you, and then 1920, and it goes up from there. So I paid 9.5x. Now the base is incorrect because you can't get spell suppression on this base, but it's still really nice. That's why I had the Watcher's Eye that had it had multi-anger with spell suppression grace, and that was how I was able to get my 100% spell suppression cap. So I went ahead and I dropped that in favor, like I said, to get this new Watcher's Eye with the life gain on hit, just to test it out. But I find that the one-shots are pretty consistent all around. You're just going to get one-shot if you're just trying to map. And for any boss, as long as if you happen to get hit by anything, you pretty much will die. If it's a slam, or like, let's say the Minotaur is diving and he catches you, you're just gone instantly. But other than that, the build is really great. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these gameplay samples that I kind of just quickly recorded just to show like how deaths can happen randomly in maps.
Now the first clip you're going to see here, you could easily argue that it's a misplay on my part because I do like to play the build super ranged, so when I get in a little bit close, I just get instantly one-shot because I'm trying to play it off screen with Expedition, and these mobs are very, very dangerous. And it's easy to really not even realize what they're doing or where they are because you're trying to stand as far back as you really can so that, your character can do as much damage. So I move in there and I just instantly die. Now here you're going to see a Beyond boss. Just kind of jumps on me. This is really just kind of showing that the build is essentially very unforgiving when it comes to you trying to run maps, especially with things like this happening. So there you have it. That's just, my thoughts on the build. And I will mention one thing I did happen to forget. If you have a Headhunter and you're also playing this build, your mapping experience is going to be really amazing, I would imagine. I haven't tested Headhunter. I was going to ask my friend to borrow his Headhunter just to kind of do some sample testing on it. I'm not interested in getting Headhunter. I'm going to go for Mageblood, and I'm pretty close, so I should be able to get the Mageblood probably in the next couple days or so. So I didn't want to, go and try to push this character even further. But those are just my thoughts on it. If you have a Headhunter and you're mapping with this build, my investment, it probably will feel 10 times better because the Headhunter mods are going to carry you. And also worth mentioning is that I am chill and freeze immune. My Pantheons are upgraded so I can avoid stun recently. I at least put a good amount of effort into trying to make the build as tanky as I possibly could make it. But at the end of the day, you're playing a Deadeye as a ranger. You kind of accept that this is the way things are. Even for Magic Find builds back in the day that used to run yellow maps, it was a problem surviving with, quantity gear, for example. So just kind of take those things into consideration because the prices are just a lot higher now for some of the gear. And if you want to invest in this build, you're going to need more chaos resistance. You're going to need really, really good, like a really good Watcher's Eye, and overall just go for 100% spell suppression. So let me know what you guys think about all of this. Leave a comment. I do appreciate it if you can leave a like on the video. It does help me out. Subscribe for more videos, and I will try my best to have videos out regularly. I essentially started spending time on this character, and I was trying to min-max it as best as I could. So my name is KaL. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later.